run her off, can you ask her, because I think I want to understand, I think the other people want to understand, to send an email through you to explain how this whole new charter commission arose, who decided when to do it, who appointed it, and the election process to ratify. Can you explain that to us some more in an email?
I can do that in an email. I can meet with anybody who wants to. Like I say, my goal is to educate everybody on this.
And
so
Sherry, put who's on it and who's heading it up. Put who's on it and who's heading it up.
Doobie is the chair. He's out of RISD. I don't have the full list with me.
Can I put it in the email?
Yeah, she'll send it to me and I'll get it out to everybody.
It was published in the Richardson the paper that the city publishes every month.
What concerned me, I am so sorry, let me say one more
Jeff
point.
needs to go.
Okay, I'll quit. Anybody wants to know, let me know.
Jeff, you're on.
Okay.
So sorry.
Hey. Everybody stand up real good while I tell you who I am. Stand up, stretch out, get your arms moved. You've been sitting down. My name is Jeff Tokar. I've been in the professional fire service for 30 years, 29 of which was with Garland. You can sit down when you're stretched out. I just want you to be able to shake out the cobwebs and know what that is. I presented this at the Texas Association of Fire Educators. I've been the president for 8 years, didn't seek re-election in San Antonio. It's all the fire training officers around the state. We're shifting gears. This is going to be really different than what you've heard tonight. And I think it's really important. It's dear to my heart. I think it's dear to our city, our state, and our nation. And I don't think maybe a lot of people really realize what in the world is going on. If I can get this working, let's see. Okay. Hold on to your seat because we're going to be moving through a lot of different things. All right? So just hold on. We're going to be blowing through. And I want to talk about something. Faith. I want you to realize, first of all, this is not a religious proselytation presentation. All right? I'm not a minister. I have a degree in theology, in my undergraduate degree. I have a degree in master's in executive leadership. I'm not a Jew. We're going to be talking about different religions here, but I want you to understand that because we're going to be talking about ideologies and things going on in the world. This is not meant to offend anybody. It's a presentation on studies I've been doing for a long time. But when we talk about faith, everybody in this room has faith. You have faith that there is a God, one and only God. You have faith in a God. You may have faith in many gods, or your faith may be that there's no God at all. Everybody in this room has faith, and it's okay for you to have your faith because in America, you have the freedom to choose and believe how you want to believe. But I want you to realize everybody has faith. Faith is the foundation of our beliefs. Beliefs develop our values. Values reflect our character. Our character is manifested in our actions. You need to remember that. I don't know if y'all remember this, but God came to Garland, Texas, March 31st, 1998. Does anybody remember that? Some of y'all remember that? God's Salvation Church in South Garland. Chen Tao came to Garland, Texas. They bought a home in South Garland. They set up there. A lot of his followers bought homes all in South Garland, and they would hold meetings every night. And they had these signs posted out in front of the house. And as you'll see, they talked about God, our Heavenly Father, and He was going to come to Garland. He was coming in a UFO on that March day, and He was going to take everybody with Him. They had these crosses set out front. I don't know what the fan was for. Propulsion or what. We got some kind of sword and all kinds of stuff here. But they all wore these white outfits, white shoes, and white Stetson's hats. Man, the hat factory in Garland made a ton of money. Because all of them wore these hats, and they would come every night down to Chen Tao's house, and they would worship there together. And then he would talk through an interpreter to the people, and as we got closer to that week when God was going to appear, you can imagine what happened. Press from all over the world descended on Garland. My job at that time was the safety and security of those people. People in the neighborhood began to sell their driveways to satellite trucks, TV companies, anything they could to get money. And that was because I sat next door over here with some police officers in a television truck, and my job was to watch them So we didn't have an incident like Johnstown or like the people in the Purple Capes in California. When God didn't come back that night, we have a mass suicide. Our duty was to be sure if we saw something going wrong for the people to protect their lives. And that's what we were there for, to protect them. Their right, their freedom in America to believe the way they wanted to believe, to have the faith they wanted to have. So reporters came from everywhere. The cameras would line up, and we just had to barricade South Garland because of so many people coming into the country, into the state, and our town. But after that, you can guess what happens. The crazy people start showing up. This guy was looking for a golf sponsor. And he would walk the neighborhoods and he'd have the phone number on his shirt. And then it got even crazier. These guys showed up and they were offering you Polaroids because the end was near. You could stand, I don't know if that was Moses, God, or whoever in the alien. But God was coming to Garland, and it got me to thinking, especially about in emergency responses, is God coming to a neighborhood near you? There's a lot of religions of the world, and these are just a few of the main religions that are in the world. The main religions, though, I want to talk to you about tonight, though, is Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. Christianity is basically considered to be at least all these denominations. Some of you might see some of the denominations that you attend, the churches you attend up here. But I want to tell you that in Christianity, Christianity is supposed to be, people believe that Jesus Christ was the Messiah and they live their lives like He would have lived His life. I can't tell you that all of these believe in that. But in the world today, all of these religions are lumped into what is called Christianity. Christianity is the religion based on the person and teaching of Jesus of Nazareth and its beliefs or practices, Christian quality or character. Judaism is the monotheistic, one God religion of the Jews collectively. A lot of you know these things. Now Islam also is a religion on a monotheistic God. And they're regarded as a monotheistic faith, regarded as revered through the Muhammad as the prophet of Allah. The Muslim world, the most enormous complex of fortifications in all Islam. Now there's different types of Islam. If you don't follow the news, you need to know. There's Sunni Muslims. There's Shiite Muslims. And this continues on Shiite Muslims. But there's some things I want you to recognize in this. There's also Wahhabism, and you'll find a lot of this in Saudi Arabia. Judaism is the monotheistic religion we talked about based on the Old Testament, and it's got its belief in God and that God was a creator. But the Jews do not believe that Jesus was the Messiah. Let's go through some history real quick here. We've got to go through this, and I'm trying to speed things up a little bit so that we can get you out of here. I know you've been here long already. But we need to recognize these things and we need to understand them about these three particular religions. They all believe in creation, but some starts to split here on the different beliefs, the different faiths. They believe that God created the earth, He did it in 7 days. There's other people that believe there's a Big Bang theory. My theory is if God wanted to create something, He could say bang and it was there. So whatever your belief is, most Christians and Jews and even Islam believes in creation. But they start to deviate when we get down towards original sin, Adam and Eve. We go through a lot of history now and we come to a guy named Noah. At that point in the world, God was displeased with the world. The world was full of sin, adultery, stealing, whatever you want to think of. It was a bad time. But He thought this man, Noah, was a man that was righteous and a man that he can continue on the human race through. Noah had about 120 years to build this ark. Noah was a pastor, but he was the worst pastor in the history of the world because he only got 8 people on the boat with him. All right? Him, his wife, and his 3 sons. Now these are his sons. Now remember, the earth was flooded, and this is according to history. This is according to the Bible. This is according to the writings of Noah. He had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Larry, Curly, and Mo. All right? These all land with Noah when the waters recede. Now it's important to know who these people are so you can understand what in the world is going on. One day, after the waters had subsided, Noah had planted some vineyards and he had some wine and he got drunk and he passed out. Oh my goodness. Well, Ham goes in and he sees his dad naked. And so he goes and tells his brother, Shem and Japheth, and they walk in backwards to cover Noah. And I never understood what's the big deal about Ham seeing his dad naked. Well, I understand my brother was a pastor on the staff in a church in Detroit years ago. And does anybody remember the Iran hostages back in Jimmy Carter before Ronald Reagan came into office? Well, some reason, I don't know or remember why, there was a hostage that came to Detroit, or some of the hostages, and my brother got to work with them. And he said in this culture, in this religion, it is a big, big disgrace to see a man naked. He said, in fact, one of the hostages told him the only time that they could talk and know they weren't being listened to is when they were in the shower together. Because it was forbidden for them to be seen naked. So they did a lot of their talking and communicating in the shower. And so Ham sees his dad naked. The brothers go in and cover him up. And this is bad stuff for Ham. I don't know how Noah finds it out, but he finds out. And so Ham's son, Canaan, receives a curse. And if you read through the Bible, there's all kinds of curses that go on. So not Ham, but his descendant, Canaan, receives a curse. Now Ham descends into the area that we first know as Palestine. His sons, his descendants, Canaan, they come right here. And that's the first place that Palestine's recognized. Japheth settles up in here, more Europe and Asia, and Shem comes down more this way in Saudi Arabia. Now this is important for us to know. Abraham, later on, after we go down through the genealogies, is a man that is thought to be righteous by God, and he chooses him to lead him and his descendants, his seed, to the promised land. He's going to be the promised one. Well, Abraham's wife Sarah is barren. She's old. She can't have kids. And a lot of you have heard this story growing up in church. Well, she gives her handmaiden Hagar to Abraham, and he has a son, and it's called Ishmael. So then later on, Sarah's able to get pregnant, and she has a son, and his name is Isaac. Well, this is where the family feud starts. Sarah one day sees Ishmael mocking Isaac during the time of his circumcision. She gets mad, the cat fight starts, and I'm paraphrasing, you won't find that in the Bible. And she says, look, you need to send them out of here. They got to get out of here. So Abraham agrees, and he sends off Hannah and Ishmael. Ishmael and Isaac are brothers. And you can see when we come from Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the genealogy is starting to spread, and the lands they are occupying, and now we get down to Ishmael and Isaac. Isaac is the one that's promised to carry the seed of Abraham to be blessed. Ishmael is also given a promise that he will be blessed and he'll be many nations. Each will turn into 12 tribes. Well, then Jacob comes on the scene, Isaac's son, and you may have heard the story about Jacob and Esau. One day Esau comes in, he's hungry, he's starved to death, and his brother says, hey, I'll give you some stew if you give me my birthright. Jacob says, well, what good is my birthright if I'm going to die and starve to death? You can have it. So Jacob gets his birthright, and later on, when his father Isaac is old, and they give their blessing to their son, Jacob sneaks in and steals the blessing. Well, because he steals the blessing, Esau is ticked off and he wants to kill him. So Jacob leaves. And man, I am paraphrasing big time. If any of you all ever been to church, you understand this. But this genealogy is important. Well, later on, Jacob's going to come back to his land. He's going to come back. He's going to leave his father. He has two wives. He has Rachel and Leah. And he loves Rachel. But on the way back, he gets a fight in the wilderness. And he fights with God. And his name is changed, and he becomes Israel. Now remember, Isaac, Jacob, Israel, Ishmael. Joseph then is one of the sons of Jacob. The story about him being sold into bondage. He becomes a leader in Egypt. And then because of a famine, he brings all of his family, Isaac and them, down to Egypt. And after time, the Egyptians make slaves of the Jews. And then you've seen Charlton Heston and the Ten Commandments. And then we come to know Moses. And Moses is the one that gets the Jews free to go back to the promised land. So now you've got, remember, Canaan, who was cursed, comes into the first land called Palestine. And then we have Abraham who comes in there, and he's in the land, using the land. And then we go through the descendants, go away to Egypt. Then they come back into the land when other people are living in the land. And through the time of the Israelis, they're conquered by the Babylonians, carried off into captivity. They come back under the Persians, and then the Romans destroy in AD 70 Jerusalem, and then finally the Germans, and we know about the Holocaust. The Muslims are in the world at that time too. And the Israelis are in and out of the land. And what we have in this family feud that has continued through the generations is Isaac and Ishmael. They're fighting each other over their inheritance, over their birthright, and who they are. The Muslims had a caliphate, and it ended at the end of World War II, one of their caliphates. End of the Crusades at the Ottoman Empire. Now, a caliphate is a Muslim empire that is run by a caliph, a supreme leader. Now, let's talk about some of the end times, and we're going to connect all this together. At the end times in Christianity, some believe in a rapture where all the saints that are believers are taken out. There's opinions that this rapture happens before a time of tribulation. It might happen during the midpoint, 3.5 years of a 7-year tribulation, or it may not happen at all. Now, I'm not going to go into the dogma or the theologies, but I want you to understand what some people's faith and beliefs are. Rapture, 7-year tribulation, Christ comes back at the end of the tribulation, then there's a millennial kingdom. The end times for Islam is also known as the Day of Reckoning. Mandated by Allah, requires Islam to completely subdue the earth through military conquest. Tolerated minorities under Islamic rule, such as Jews and Christians. This controlling command eventually brought Islam to Israel and is the reason the Muslims' uncompromising control of the Temple Mount. So we've got different groups here that are looking for end times. The Jews are looking for end times too. They're looking for the Messiah. So we've got three groups. We've got Christians who believe that Jesus Christ was the Messiah, and He came and died for the salvation of souls, and that all that believe in Him one day will be with Him, and that He is coming back again. God is coming to a neighborhood near you. The Jews are offended. They don't like Christians. They don't like Muslims. But the Jews are still looking for the Messiah. They're looking for one to come back to be their king, to free them from their enemies. And they say, we will rebuild the temple in Jerusalem and gather Jews from all over the world and bring them back to the land of Israel. It will be before the Hebrew year 6000. As of September 25th, 2014, the Hebrew year is 5,775. Where is the Temple Mount to where they want to build their temple? Does anybody recognize what that structure is? That is the Dome of the Rock. It's exactly where the center, where the ancient temple was. The Holy of Holies and the holy place. What a coincidence in all this world that the Dome of the Rock would end up right there. What was the Promised Land? This was the Promised Land. Right here. ISIL. You hear our president talk about ISIL. What's the L stand for? Levant. What is the Levant? That is the Levant. Right there. Look like a familiar land? What does that man believe in? What is his faith? You may have the same contention that I have, self or whatever, but you have to understand, folks, this. The battle from Isaac and Ishmael is real. Whether you believe in God, whether you believe in Allah, whether you believe in plural gods, or whether you believe in no God at all. There is a religious battle going on in this world right now. I don't think our talk show hosts or our politicians realize what they're dealing with. You see, traditionally, Democrats and Republicans and Libertarians and whoever you want to throw into the mixed Tea Party have always kind of bantered, negotiated, and worked things out with each other. Then they'll make a deal and they'll shake hands. But I don't think they truly understand what they're dealing with. You see this man right here, he was raised by a Muslim father. And in America, that is his right, that is his freedom of choice for the faith he chooses to believe in. But this man here, I believe, is a Muslim whose religion is Islam. And that is his right. But my question about that is, if that is his belief, that is the foundation of his values, that reflects his decisions and choices and character and his actions, where is he going with it? I don't think our politicians understand exactly the battle in this world that's going on. Now I want to change gears in 1 second here. When we train firefighters, we train them for things that you can't even think about. We train them on nuclear, incendiary, chemical, biological, explosives. When you call for help, other than somebody breaking in or a disturbance, you call the police department, but anything else you call for, you call firefighters. If I was to bring training officers in or firefighters in to do a training and told them, all right, I want you guys, you're going to command a bus accident with kids and an MVA. Let's make it a lot of vehicles. Let's make it 40 or 50 vehicles. Let's put a potential hazmat truck burning in there. If you don't know what hazmat is, it's all kinds of flammable or combustible chemicals that could be toxic or non-toxic. I tell you what, let's do this in this. Let's throw in high-angle rescue, that you've got to rescue people high up. Well, why not? Let's put multiple victims in there. There's people hurt everywhere. Let's throw in water rescue at the same time, including swift water rescue. Let's add numerous collapse hazards. And on top of that, let's put two sides of a river that you have to operate on. 10 years ago, most of the guys said, come on, that's not going to happen. This is an impossible scenario. Minnesota Bridge Collapse, August 2007. They had that and more, all at one incident. I thought how funny that it was on television on ABC this last Saturday night, talking about this incident that happened nearly 8 years ago. So firefighters, emergency responders have to play what if all the time. What if this is going to happen or that's going to happen? What are we going to do about it? What if God was to come to a neighborhood near you? What if the mystery of the Shemitah? Jonathan Cahn is a rabbi out of New York City. You have Messianic Jews and non-Messianic Jews. A Messianic Jew does believe that Jesus Christ was the Messiah. A non-Messianic Jew is still looking for the Messiah. He doesn't believe Jesus was the Messiah. He believes that Jesus was the Messiah. He's written a book called The Mystery of the Shemitah. I like Jonathan Cahn because he's not going to tell you I'm right, I'm wrong. He's just going to tell you what I've found.
It's a great book.
It is a great book. And this man right here, The Mystery of the Shemitah, if you remember the Old Testament, every 6 years they were allowed to work the land. The 7th year they weren't allowed to work the land. The land had to rest. And at the end of that 7th year, you would pay back and forgive all debts. Everything's forgiven. It's wiped clean. Jonathan Cahn, through his study, found out that the Shemitah has been 85% on all of our market crashes. It's been correct. It's been dead on. The two ago was September of 2001. 8 or 7 years later to the day in 2008 was the next Shemitah. We are in another Shemitah year right now. It started when Israelis celebrated on September 24th, year 5775. It ends September 13th. Jonathan Cahn doesn't know this is going to happen, but he says if the Shemitah holds true, it can be a blessing, it can be a curse. If you're serving God, it is a blessing. If you are not, it is a curse. And that's why the markets crash, because God says, debt gone. It ends this year, September 13th. Will it happen? What if? I don't know. These are 2 videos you need to get. Agenda by an Idaho legislator. It comes out with a new one next month. He stumbled onto these things, wrote an article, it went ballistic nationally. He's coming out with a new one in April. I hope to see it, but it's very informative. A lot of charts in there. Jonathan Cahn, The Harbinger Decoded. He wrote a book called The Harbinger. Again, he's just showing you coincidences he stumbled upon. What if the mystery of the Shemitah is true? What if Russia, besides things that are going on in this world that can happen, what if Russia continues on and goes through the Ukraine and Estonia, right in the land where our major world wars have started in the past? What if China's housing bubble will burst? You may know that they've built city upon city that are completely empty. Nobody's even living in them. The man who built these cities said it's gonna crash. What happens if Russia goes on the move? What happens if the Chinese economy collapses? What happens in the Middle East? What happens in a new caliphate? You hear them talk about a caliphate? They are wanting now, according to their religious inheritance, their right to the land, their right to the blessing. They want the El Mahdi to come to be their Messiah, and they want a new caliph, a leader. What if all these things were to domino at one time? What would happen in America? They say now that there's sleeper cells in every state in America. I did this presentation with the ex-assistant deputy director, or the ex-deputy director of the FBI, Buck Rovell. You may know him. He worked in several administrations. You know Buck. And he validated everything we talked about here. 35 terrorist training camps are in America alone. What happens if these terrorist cells wake up? What happens if there's economic collapse in America? What happens if the Shemitah's right? What happens if other economies collapse? Folks, it may not happen. I don't know. But as an emergency responder, we play what if. And my biggest concern is this, is if we have an economic collapse because of God's blessing being taken off of America, and we have a National Ferguson-esque event, the pillage, the gangs, on a national scale will be horrendous. And I told our emergency responders, you are not ready for this at all. Let me tell you why. Because if this happens on a national scale, things are going to get out of control. Martial law will come in. Buck Rovell was in charge of the LA riots, and they had to put in martial law, and they had to shut everything down. They had to control it. They had to isolate it. But if we have something this big, the entitlements are gone, all the freebies are gone, and there's going to be massive riots. And if our police and firefighters show up for work, and they're not staying home to protect their families, they are not ready. I've worked over the past several years with the Israeli emergency responders. We've worked in training with them in case we need to go there and help them, because they said if war comes, their firefighters, their medics get on tanks, they go to the front lines and they fight. We need people to come and man our fire engines for us. And they've been telling me there will be war. But they also tell me we will win. That's right. They are determined. They will not let happen to them what has happened to them in the past. That's why I love that Netanyahu spoke a week ago to our Congress. They are fighting for their inheritance, for their right. The Jews want peace. The Christians want peace. The Christians would give the Jews the shirt off their back, even though the Jews don't like them because they believe in Jesus. But Islam wants America. They want infidels. They want Christians. They want anybody who doesn't believe in Islam dead. And that's just a fact, folks. That's their religion. And we have to look at the reality. Our firefighters don't have what Israel has. They have enough food to provide for their nation. They have underground shelters. They are ready. We are not ready for this type of event in America, let alone if the sleeper cells wake up. What if, I just told you about Israel being ready. I've got just 2 short stories I want to tell you now. When we talk about what if, we try to look at very high-risk, low-frequency events. Does anybody know Arthur Bud Holland? Bud, as they called him, was one of the greatest B-52 pilots you have ever seen. Boeing B-52 Stratofortress. Look at that thing. Man, look, that just sounds great. Stratofortress. Bud was a Vietnam veteran. He could fly a B-52. B-52 was a bad number in Taliban bingo. You'll catch that later. But the problem with Bud is he would take risks. He took a B-52 one time and did a 360 turn over his daughter's softball field when they were playing a game. Bud took a B-52 one time. Any military in here that have been around B-52s when they're flying? I used to go to Love to see them when they were out at Carswell. What an aircraft. Bud took a B-52 over a base with some guys in formation at a parade 100 feet off the ground and buzzed them. The rooster tails off the wings and the dust just covered them. A lot of people reported about Bud. They said he's a risk. He needs to be taken out of the plane. Things are going to go wrong. But guys, it was just Bud. On June 24th, 1994, at Fairchild Air Force Base, 2 days before an air show, doing a practice run, Bud and 3 other crewmen, Bud was doing some of his antics. They don't know if he was trying to do a barrel roll in a B-52 or what. But Bud took the B-52 into the ground with those 3 men. High risk. They said it was because of his personality and behavior in the after report. Delayed or inadequate reactions to earlier incidents. The warning signs were there, but nobody would listen, nobody would do anything about it in the sequence of flight events. Eastern Airlines flight number 401, December 29, 1972. These pilots were going from New York to Miami. They'd been in the air 3 hours. The pilots were highly trained, and the plane was only 4 months old. They were on their final approach, coming down to the runway. They could see it. But all of a sudden, a light came on, or didn't come on, right here. On this DC-10 are 3 lights. And when those lights illuminate, it tells you all the gear is down. Well, the front light didn't come on. And so they asked the tower, hey, we're going to go around. We got to figure out what's wrong. Back in those days, how many of y'all remember this? I'm trying to get the right slide to pop up, and it won't, but that's all right. The engineers, they used to have a flight engineer, sat there and controlled the fuel and the calculations and a lot of things going on the planes where now they don't have an engineer. The pilots do everything. Well, they put the plane on autopilot, presumably. They tell the engineer to go down in what they call the hell hole, and that's where you go down to look at the nose gear to visually verify if it's down. And they were so focused on everything going on with this light that the engineer was not at their station, and they think on those planes when the pilot bumps the stick, it takes the plane off of autopilot. And they were in the dark and they had no idea that they were descending. Until finally, boom, they crash. I think it's about 89 people lived, but 103 died. The flight crew was so obsessed with an inoperative light bulb that they failed to fly the plane. And they died. They took their focus off their mission. They took their focus off of their job. Right now, folks, we are in a time of low frequency, but high risk. Traditionally, in the fire service and everything you can think of, and this is one of our problems, the fire services, 150 years of tradition, not impeded by progress. We do everything the same way all the time. We have been so reactive that when an event like West Texas happens, we go, hey, you know, something's wrong here. Why were those guys in that building with all those chemicals? We need to be proactive and do something about that. And that's a way we are with a lot of things in government and within America. We are reactive instead of proactive. But folks, I want to tell you something urgent right now on this conflict going on in the world right now between Isaac and Ishmael. This battle in religion and birthrights. Whether you believe in religion or not, whether you believe in a spirit world or not, the battle is going on. And we're seeing it predominantly in America. And I think we see it in something I call M3P. M stands for money. The 3 P's are power, popularity, and prestige. And if you follow these things, if they're not used the right way, you can find the downfall in everything.
Yes.
You follow the money. You follow the power structure. You follow the popularity and the prestige, and if it's out of order, it's sinking. We are dealing with destructive personalities and behavior, just like Bud. We are focused on a light bulb when the plane is crashing. And I know I'm saying some very dramatic things, but we cannot have a delayed or inadequate action. If we continue on the present course of the sequence of events, we're going to destroy America.
That's true.
On July 4th, 1776, these men gathered and they signed the Declaration of Independence. I know it's something we teach in history, but these men right here knew that they were putting their life on the line and they could lose everything they had, and some of them did. Patrick Henry in 1775, before that in the Virginia House of Burgess, he said, "Give me liberty or give me death." Patrick Henry also said, "One nation under God." It cannot be emphasized too clearly or too often that this nation was founded not by religionists, but by Christians. Not by religion, but on the gospel of Jesus Christ. December 15th, 1791, the First Amendment. The United States Constitution prohibits the making of any law respecting the establishment of any religion, impeding free exercise of religion. This prohibits government from being involved in religion. But a problem happened. January 1st, 1802, during the Danbury Baptist Convention in Danbury, Connecticut, Thomas Jefferson was making a statement. And he talked about building a wall between church and state. But that was misconstrued, and it has been over time, of what he said. Because he wasn't talking about a separation of church and state. He was reiterating that the federal government shall not impede or be involved in church, in religion. That was the true meaning of the separation of church and state. The First Amendment was not to evict God from the government. But that's what's happening today. The First Amendment was intended to keep the federal government out of religion. But because of tolerance, everything's been changing. Do you know what the good old definition of tolerance was? Tolerance was that you have the right to believe what you want to believe. I have the right to believe what I want to believe. And I'll respect the right you have to believe what you want to believe. In fact, men and women have died in service to this country to protect that right to believe what you want to believe. That's your right in America. But what has happened in tolerance is that the new tolerance says you have to tolerate everything. Everything has to be equal and accessible. They're telling our kids in the school that intolerance is the only thing that we won't tolerate. You have to put everything to a perfect, equal level. You have to believe it, and you have to accept it. In fact, the modern progressive centrists will tell you that they are intolerant of the fact that Christians believe and make decisions based on the Holy Scriptures. They are not tolerant of people who believe the teachings of the Bible, because to be tolerant of that people would be in contrast to their views, because those people believe a Bible that is intolerant. So it is their job as tolerant people not to tolerate people who believe in the Bible, because the Bible is intolerant. Therefore, their intolerance to intolerant people is perfectly acceptable. That is where we are at. We are so tolerant, politically correct, we are crashing the plane because we're focused on the light bulb. Now I know I've just shotgun blast through a lot of information here. And I don't want to leave with what we should do, because I think there's things that we can do. Even simple citizens here in Richardson, Texas. We need to pray for a spiritual awakening and revival in America. Amen. We need to pray for godly men and women to take a stand. And folks, this is a big one. We need to pray for a godly leader. And I'm not saying that that may be a politician. I'm just saying it's somebody that has the courage to stand up and speak truth. We need to let our voice be heard in Washington. We need to be seen and heard in Washington. There was an old Bible story, maybe you remember it, about Moses when they were fighting the Amalekites. Aaron and Hur, as long as they held or propped up Moses' arms, Joshua was victorious. But if his arms would get weary and fall down, they would start to lose. So they held his arms up until the victory was won. There are some people in Washington today that are conservative, that are believers, that believe in the Constitution, that believe in God, America, and freedom. We need to hold their arms up. We need to let them know we are here and we are supporting them. We've been quiet too long. Because one nation under God is a nation with liberating freedom and blessing. A nation without God is a nation of bondage and suppression. A nation under God is a nation structured under the Constitution, law, and order. A nation without God is a nation of corruption and chaos. A nation under God is a nation of character and integrity. A nation without God is a nation of self-indulgence and lies. A nation under God is a nation of truth and honesty. A nation without God is a nation of deception and fraud. A nation under God is a nation led under the wisdom of God. A nation without God is a nation led in destructive, radical, narcissistic euphoria. And that's where we're at today. We have turned from the forefathers' foundation of this country, a nation that was founded under God. And what we need right now is we need Elijahs. Elijah was a prophet, he was a simple man, but Elijah was not afraid to stand alone. He went to Mount Carmel and he faced hundreds of false prophets, besides the multitudes that were there. But because he was willing to stand on the foundation of God, his firm beliefs, his character, his values, his actions, God gave him a victory. I am nobody. I don't have a lot of money. I'm not well known. But I am a person of one that believes in God, America, and freedom. And folks, right now, we need to unite and take a stand. And what I'm propagating to you is, I don't know who you are. I would love to come and speak at churches. I would love to come and speak to state Tea Party or national Tea Party events. I would love to speak to the legislator. I would love to speak to Congress or the Senate. I would love to share what I'm sharing with you today, because our people are blind to the true battle that is going on in this world and in America today. And I don't think we could make the 2016 elections, folks. We are not looking at the buds that are flying the plane right now. We are focused on the light bulb and we are crashing. And we have to do something now, because we are going down a hill and a slippery slope very fast. And I don't know, I'm not telling you we won't, but I cannot see how this country can stay and be the country I grew up and you grew up in by the year of 2016 at the elections. But I think if we will make a stand now and we will unite and we will use our influence, the people we know, I think it's time for us, before the Supreme Court votes this June, to have massive crowds, not in protest, but in love of God and country. God said to love your neighbor with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. This is the first great commandment. The second one's like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. He's simple. People make him hard. But we need to be heard and we need to be seen in Washington, D.C. to let those people like John Boehner and Mitch McConnell and all those others know that we are here and we will be heard, and we're going to make our presence felt. And it's going to be felt now, and it's going to be felt in the next elections. Because they're killing our country and they're on the fast track of doing it. We can sit back and let it happen and face the music. Or we can stand and unite and be seen and be heard. I speak just really quickly, a lot more, to telecide.me. I have cards if you want, The Perfect Storm. You can download there. There's more there that'll tell you about everything I've talked about tonight. But I hope, if anything here tonight, just sharing with you the battle that's going on between Isaac and Ishmael that will not end. It will never end no matter what until there is a champion. That you will champion America, freedom, and God. And let's get the ball rolling. Let's be present. Let's be seen. Let's be heard in Washington, D.C. And I think we need to do it before the Supreme Court meets and votes this June. Thank you very much. God bless you.